Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, we are from group 5, which consists of me, Rastolia Kirani, Nurfadilah Zahira M, Tracy Trinita Ramadhani, Sulistina, and Sri Wahyuni will present a material about collecting learner language sample of need analysis. So then we're gonna talk about the introduction of this material. The background is need analysis in language teaching and language program design can be defined as a systemic process which help teachers to collect information and get an accurate and complete picture of their student needs and preference. The second one is problem statement. Based on the background above, the problems to be answered in this material are: first, what is language learners? The second is, what types of data can be collected from learners? And the third is, what methods can be used to obtain language sample from learners? And then the purpose of writing this paper and making this video is to find out the types of data of this needs analysis.
Okay, chapter 2, part A, I will explain about what is learner language. So, learner language is the oral or written language produced by learners. It serves as the primary data for the study of second language acquisition. It is not the only type of data available to SLA researchers. We will also see that learner language is not a monolithic phenomenon, but rather highly variable, raising important issues to do with what kinds of learner language constitute the most valid data for the study of how learners learn, collecting data on how well learners perform on different language tasks. For example, business letters, interviews, and telephone calls, and also documenting the typical problems they have is a useful and direct source of information about learners' language needs.
B. Types of data. Many different types of data can be collected from learners. However, it is helpful to identify three broad sets. First, non-linguistic performance data. It involves measuring learners' nonverbal response to linguistic stimuli. First, measuring learners' reaction time. This provides evidence of whether the cognitive operations evident in a learner's performance reflect control or automatic processing, and thus the extent to which specific linguistics have been mastered. Second, measuring comprehension, nonverbal. Measures of comprehension have been used to establish whether learners are able to process specific linguistic features in the input. Third, measuring learner institution about grammaticality. Learners have institution about the grammaticality of L2 sentence. This institution may differ from those of native speakers.
Alright, the second types of data is sample of learner language. So the primary data for investigating second language acquisition should be samples of learner language. Ultimately, what learners know is the best reflected in their comprehension of input and in the language they produce. And learner reproduction is inherently variable. This variability is evident in a number of different ways. The first, as any language teacher is aware, learners sometimes make errors and sometimes use the target language first. And the second, variability in learner language is evident even when no error has been committed. And the third, the order of acquisition of different grammatical structures can vary according to the kind of task used to elicit a sample of learner language. And the last is learner vary in the choice of language, switching from the second language to their mother tongue according to the situational context, and also mixing the two languages in the contraction of individual utterance. And a key factor is the nature of the sample, which depends crucially on how the sample is collected. And we will distinguish three principal methods for collecting data and correspondingly three types of production data. The first method consists of obtaining samples of naturally occurring language need use. So by naturally occurring, we mean that the sample is produced in a real-life situation in order to satisfy some communicative or aesthetic need. Thus, a letter written to a friend, a conversation around the dinner table, or a poem are all examples of naturally occurring language use. And such example can be oral or written. And in the case of oral samples, researchers will need to video or audio record the performance. And the other two methods involve elicitation. It means that the use of specially designed instruments to obtain production sample from the learner. And following Gordon 1976 reproduced in 1981, two kinds of elicitation can be distinguished in clinical and mental elicitation. And Corder defines clinical elicitation as getting the informant to produce data of any sort and suggests that it is used where the investigator has not yet formed any well-formed hypothesis about the nature of the experiment language he is investigating. And in contrast, experimental elicitation involves getting the informant to produce data in incorporating particular features which the linguist is interested in at the moment and considers, therefore, a careful controlled produce. And the distinction between clinical and experimental elicitation matches the distinction between the use of tasks where the learners are primarily concerned with message conveyance, need to utilize their own linguistic resources to construct utterance and focus on achieving some non-linguistic outcome. This is the sections following provide a more detailed account of these three methods of data collection. As you can see in the slide, there are several learner variables. The first one is the mother tongue, that is the languages the participant learned as a child. And the second is other languages, that is any other languages the participants have learned as a second or foreign languages. And the third is age, that is stated in years and months, for example 8.3 years. And the fourth is gender, that is the number of male and female learner in the sample. And the fifth is education. There are two types. The first one is the number of years of formal schooling, and the second is the number of years studying the target language. And the sixth is school social economic status, or SES. So SES assigns participants a score reflecting their social class. And various measures of SES have been used based on one or more of the following, that is occupation, level of education, income, area of residence. And sixth is opportunity for naturalistic acquisition. So that is the number of years and months spent in a country where the target language serves as the main medium of communication.
B. Learner language sample collection. Language samples may be collected through, first, written test. So written test is a test whose question and answer are written in writing, such as multiple choice. Second, oral test are tests in the form of question given by the teacher verbally and students respond to this question verbally. Third, simulation or role plays. Students are given simulation to carry out and their performance in observed or recorded. Fourth, achievement test. So achievement tests are tests for their abilities in different domains of language use. 5. Performance tests. So students are tested on job-related or task-related behavior. Next point is third, reports from learners about their own learning. Samples of learner language provide data that can be used to develop description of learners' interlanguages. This description in turn provides the evidence of which theories of ELT acquisition can be developed and tested. However, the process of developing and testing explanation on the basis of description of learner language is necessarily one of interference. For example,
we might discover that even advanced learners of 12 English continue to omit third persons from their production from time to time, whereas they more consistently added to mark regular past tense form. But this is an inference and we cannot be sure. One way of establishing whether such as principle have explanatory value is collecting verbal report data. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the video from our group, and I hope you guys can get the more knowledge and information of data analysis from this video and paper. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.